Welcome back to For the Millie. We are here on Monday. We got a nice Monday Night Football game here between the Texans and the Cowboys. What not quite as interesting as maybe it would have been if Dak Prescott were still playing, but should still be a pretty good game. And hopefully it's a very profitable game coming off a great weekend. Prop, how was your NFL Sunday?
It started off pretty good. The tail end, honestly, Deebo Samuel ruined what would have been an amazing Sunday. Jameson Williams came through with a max ladder. That's my first time laddering a longest reception. Took his baseline up to 21.5, up to 50 plus for plus 1,000. And that was just off of the, pretty much the FTNs, the Stats Hub, the explosive passing game, I guess you could say. The tab is not called explosive, but you know what I mean. I forgot the exact tab.
It's air yards.
The air yards, the 20-plus yard completion. Yep, things like that. So I cashed on that because of him. Also cashed on George Pickens' longest reception, all based on the air yards from FTN. So that was great. And Deebo, I went pretty heavy on Deebo. I was 3 units. So he was the only blemish on the day, I guess you could say, because I had 3 different props on him. So, but other than that, it's pretty good. I think I'm sitting at 51 units for the season right now. So looking to cash in tonight to keep the green streak rolling.
We were on a lot of the same stuff, it sounds like. Over on Underdog, I'll show you guys this. It was a really solid day. A lot of our subscribers had some big wins. A lot of 3-pick plays. Look at this 8-pick play. And check this out. As you said, we had Puka, but then the Jameson Williams over on his receiving yards also had some longest receptions.
Okay.
So, same with Kayshon Boutte, and there's the George Pickens longest reception as well.
Oh, wow.
MVS too. So it was a really, really solid day. You can see green kind of going all the way down here. We're going to try to do more of that here tonight, obviously. And TwoGun, before we jump into today's picks, how was your DFS Sunday?
Not as good as y'all's. Let's just leave it at that. It's because the right lineup together, I suppose.
My NFL DFS day, as far as DraftKings went, was yet another week where it was like the pieces were there, right? The calls were there. I played a ton of Jameson Williams. I played MVS. I just didn't have everything in the right combination. I had Jonnu Smith, $3,800, 2% on tight end, gives me 31 DraftKings points, and I feel like I lose the position because Taysom Hill went for 46.
Yeah, I didn't have any Taysom Hill. That's funny because they talked about it on that show, and I was saying how tight end's gonna break the slate.
Yeah,
and I was not on the right tight ends.
Yeah, the other big theme for me was I followed the GPP scores a lot, but there were some areas in which I ignored them, and those killed me. I was right to play the $6,000 range at running back, but I didn't have Swift. I didn't have Montgomery. Those were the top 2 GPP scores. Those guys crushed. The top wide receiver GPP score was Amon-Ra St. Brown. He had 41 DraftKings points, and I didn't play him. Now, you could have gone Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Jameson Williams. I think you would have felt a little bit crazy doing that. Obviously, it's not going to play out that way very often, but yeah, I do think looking back on it.
No, Jaguar was a good comeback.
Yeah.
How often do all those guys smash and then the other team does nothing?
Yeah, I saw. I think it was our guy Wake Forest in the chat was the Lions would get kicked out of one of the younger leagues in football because they just run up the score each and every week. But I think lots to take away. The biggest one being that where I ignored the GPP scores really came back to bite me. So just going to try to follow them even more in future weeks, particularly when I identify something as a big roster construction advantage and then don't play the guys in that price range that the GPP scores are telling me to. So that's definitely a learning moment, but at the same time, it's awesome to see the GPP scores are coming through week in, week out. And shout out to Chris, our subscriber, who won $20,000 yesterday. 3rd place in the $100 single entry, was very close to taking home that $100K. And he had those top GPP score guys. So we're right there, and the big wins are coming. Prop, why don't we jump in to our picks for the night, and why don't you take us to your favorite one?
Yes, sir. Favorite one is going to be, let me get the current line. I'm sure it's a little different. It was Nico Collins. I caught him at 70 plus receiving yards at minus 115. It's I'm looking at baselines at 79.5 now. Let me check FanDuel real quick.
Yeah, Underdog is at 75.5.
Okay. Yeah, well, on FanDuel, you can still get him at 74.5. I like it there. I was able to catch it literally as soon as the line opened, before he even got rolled in officially. That's going to be my favorite play, and I'm going to ladder him up to 100 yards. And I took his longest reception. It was at 25.5. Right now, it's at 26.5 on FanDuel. I got it at 25.5, but I'm not mad at it. Honestly, up to 30. I know you wanted to get into that one, so I'm not going to steal the thunder. I'll leave that part of it to you, Alex. But I mean, I'm just excited for Nico to be back, and I think watching this Texans offense, we can tell that they missed him while he was gone. I got some numbers I wanted to pull up real quick for him. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank. I wanted to get the exact information that I had on the write-up. Okay, here we go. So he was a 99.9 rating, matchup rating from our wide receiver cornerback matchup tool. So he did make my route tree this week. So looking at Nico, he was gone for 5 weeks, but he was dominating the target share. Not dominating because Diggs was right there, like 3% below him, but he had 567 yards, 22% target share. He had an 8 out of 12, which was leading the team. He's went past 70 yards in 10 out of his last 12 games. So this is dating back to last season too. He's going over 100 yards in 6 of those games. So looking at the Cowboys, they're allowing the third highest yards per reception at 12.6. And he should be primarily covered by Trayvon Diggs. He's allowed an 89.1 passer rating when targeted this season, and he's allowing 11.6 yards per reception. And if you look at the Cowboys per the FTN Stats Hub, they have the 4th highest deep throw rate in the league, allowed at 14.8%. And they've allowed 3 receivers to go for at least 100 yards this season. So he's covered his longest reception in 8 straight games. And I expect that streak to continue tonight. So that was pretty much my whole write-up on him. I took the 70, 100 plus. It was at plus 260 at the time. And then his longest reception over 25.5 yards. This is my favorite bet of the week, honestly.
I love it. I'm right there with you. One other thing that I'll bring up with Nico Collins, I saw Mina Kimes. Shout out to Mina Kimes, by the way, one of the certainly most famous of the Stats Hub users. She loves Stats Hub. We certainly understand why, given how much we use it. She made the point that Dallas has been super vulnerable against play action. So I want to take us through that real quick because this is one of my favorite findings that I've found all season. This just screams Nico Collins. So check this out. What we do here is we're going to go to the advanced filtering, passing, and play situation. We're going to turn play action to true. Dallas is they're allowing the 4th highest yards per attempt with play action. And then we can go to our favorite air yards tab as well. Come over here and look at the deep throw rate. And you can see Dallas allowing the 2nd highest deep throw rate with play action. So Mina's onto something for sure. Dallas very vulnerable to play action. Here's the kicker. When we go to receiving advanced player and we leave this advanced filtering on, look at the yards per route run for Nico Collins. This is insane. 10.3 yards per route run with play action this year. 5 games, 11 receptions on just 12 targets, 268 yards. He's averaging 24.5 yards per reception with play action alone. Over 2 receptions per game with play action. Now gets this fantastic play action rate, and you're telling me his longest reception is 25.5, 1 yard higher than the average with play action. So yeah, this is a home run, slam dunk, whatever you want to call it, play. Nico Collins over 25.5 longest reception. And we had a question in the chat here. Let me grab this. How do ladder plays work? So Prop, I think you probably use ladders the most on just regular sports books, in which case I'll let you kind of talk through what your process is when you just ladder on sports books first, and then I'll kind of cover how we do it here on Underdog.
Yes, sir. So when it comes to the sports book, can I share my screen real quick? Will that
throw it off? Are you able to do it?
Let's see.
Do you know how?
Yeah. Yep. Let me see. Can you see my FanDuel?
Yeah, we can.
Perfect. Okay, cool. So this is how we'll go. Honestly, Bet365 usually gives you the best odds for a ladder. It's either them or then it'll be FanDuel. So I'll show you real quick what I meant. Now, for a longest reception, I think you can only do that either on DFS or on Bet365. I took Jameson Williams on Bet365. But let's just say we want to ladder Nico's receptions, right? We will go here, and then you go to show more, and this is the ladder. So his baseline is 5.5. That's plus money. What I do when I go with a ladder, depending on how far up I'm going, let's just say I go with just 8.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, no, let's do 4. I'm gonna give an example like how I did it with JMO because we had 4 legs. So the baseline 6 will be 1 unit. If I'm a $100 unit better, so $100 on that to win 100. Next on the 7, I kind of break it down a little bit. I'll go half unit for the 50, and then the next one I'll go 25. Mm-hmm. The next leg I'll go 15. And that's how I would break down this is the simplest way to break it down was, with the $100 units. I'm going a full unit because I really believe in this line, and it's, I guess you could say, more realistic. Now we're taking more of a risk, so I'm gonna go half unit with the 7. With the 8, we're getting a little crazy, so just a quarter unit, but we still love the spot. And then the 9 is just, we're trying to get the most bang for our buck at this point. Now the plus 490, it may not be the best representation of that, but with a guy like Nico, you're not gonna get the crazier odds, So if we went to ladder Ferguson or something like that, to get the plus 700s. But that's the best way I would say to break it down. Start with your unit system, go full unit on that baseline, and then break it down from there, however you see fit for the rest of the lines.
Yeah, I love all that. The other thing I'll say is when I like to ladder, it's not just like, oh, I really like this baseline, whatever it is. So like the 25.5. I also need to feel like he has more upside than expected. So like if you look at the payouts for the ladder, the odds are pretty much going to be the same for every player, like assumes the same distribution for every player. So I want to find somebody who not just has, a really strong baseline pick, but also they have this really like just super high ceiling wherever you're going. So whether it's the longest reception, whatever. I still like this Nico number at 26.5. I'm kind of with prop. I think I'd play it all the way up to 29.5, even at even money. I do want to run through the ladder system is a little bit different on Underdog because you can't do anything on its own. So let me bring up an example from the other night here. We had a ladder on De'Aaron Fox from our show. And so here, I need one more.
He's a man of the people right now, ain't he?
He is a man of the people. That was pretty awesome. So we had Fox points laddered and we had Fox 3-pointers laddered. And so here you can see it's a 3-pick play, Dyson Daniels, Alperen Şengün, De'Aaron Fox, 2.5 threes. And then I did the exact same thing for a little bit less money. Same idea. Dyson Daniels, Alperen Şengün, De'Aaron Fox, 4.5 threes. And that one was like 7.7x multiplier. So you can see this turned into like a 47x payout for this 3-pick play based on the ladder. So that's the kind of thing that we're trying to chase down and go after with these ladders on Underdog. So essentially, like you find the other picks that you really like, you keep those other picks the same, and then you really choose that one to ladder. And we actually had a really cool request in the Pick'em channel. I believe it was from Navari. Yeah. Navari asking if we can like choose our favorite Underdog pick to ladder. And so I think we're going to start here with this Nico Collins pick, and we can go, let's see what else we can get. 29.5, 1.17x, 39.5 to 2.19, 49.5 to 4.74, and then 59.5 to 13.2x. Prop, do you have a favorite of these that you want to go up to, or are you just going to?
I would stop Nico at 50. Full confidence. The last game he played in, he caught a 67-yarder. This is when he messed up his hamstring. First game of the season, he went for 55 yards against the Colts, who I can't wait to target this weekend too. But yeah, so I would take Nico up to 50.
Are you going to stop then and not take this 59.5 at 13?
Oh, so you have that option. I've never seen that it go that high.
I haven't either. This is the first time I've
seen it. Because they offer
it.
It's like, I think they're doing it because it's him. But I mean, that is crazy value, and it's something, if he gets that one catch, he's gonna catch you on the baseline for his yards too. Yeah. So I'm not mad at that. I would sprinkle very lightly on that one though.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then on the yardage, let's see where it goes. So all the way up to 3.9x at 129.5. I think that's probably good too. I'm going to try that 13x. I'm definitely going to do it at 59.5, especially like because so much of it is from play action. play action on first down to start a drive, hit him deep. That'd be fantastic.
And it's like we're saying the same thing every week, right? Like we get a great running back with a team that's going to try to establish the run. The Cowboys are weak against the run. They worry about mixing, then boom. So
and to that point, Dallas is also just a terrible tackling team. So that can also be, he gets a screen pass. It should be a 12-yard gain, but someone misses a tackle, and now all of a sudden there he goes down the sideline. So I like both of these ladders. And from there, I think let's kick it to you, TwoGun. Why don't you give us your favorite play of the night that we can pair with this Nico Collins over on the 25.5 longest reception?
Well, it's it's another Texans pass catcher. I like Dalton Schultz over 27.5 receiving yards. You gotta love the revenge game.
I was about to say revenge, right?
Yeah.
And if you just look at his last 5 games, he had a 21-yard and a 27-yard, but he's just always close to it or more. I realize that's without Nico Collins in the lineup, but I just think he's it just doesn't take much, and he's pretty much an every down player. We'll see.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I like about this is Dallas has blitzed a lot, and Dalton Schultz has kind of been the outlet when they blitz. And interestingly, he's the only one on the team who has a higher average depth of target against man coverage than zone coverage so far this season, which I think is another point in Schultz's favor. Dallas playing a lot of man coverage, not a lot of zone. So I like this one. I'm going to stay with Houston here. I'm going to go Joe Mixon, and we're going over on his longest rush, 17.5 yards. We see that Dallas allows a lot of explosive runs. The biggest reason why is that they just give up an absolute ton of missed tackles. They, as I just said, they do not tackle well, and Mixon's explosive runs come from avoiding tackles, certainly one of his strengths. So Joe Mixon, longest rush. And as we have talked about a lot, Prop, you've made this point over and over again. The longest rush and the longest reception really, really correlate well. Where if you're going over on rushing yards, that doesn't necessarily correlate well with over on receiving yards. But the better you can run the ball, the more they have to bring the safety down. Now you get the longest reception. You get some explosive plays. Now the safeties go back, and there goes the big run through a gaping hole. So really like the correlation here, and we don't really get penalized for it. So I really like this trio to start, where we have this Mixon, Schultz, and Nico Collins. Where are you going to take us to next, PropGod?
I was gonna ask TwoGun, what do you think about Schultz for the longest reception? Do you just like the, because I know you're doing it from DFS, right? So what do you think about, I think it's at 14.5. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I see his hit rate on that is even better than his, it is for the yards, because like you said, when he catches it, it's usually for about 10 to 15 yards. Or would you rather the baseline on the receiving yards?
It's funny, I didn't really think about it that much. I don't think about longest reception because I mainly think in showdown terms or pick six terms. That's just not really something they offer. But I think you guys are making a good point in that it sounds like between his ADOT and just the way he'll be targeted, it makes sense to maybe just go for that longest reception in case. Hey, remember last game? What's his face? Got one catch for 8 yards. Remember?
Oh yeah,
that was awful. That cost us the 6 for 6. By the way, we nailed everything else. We were that 1.5 yard short.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah,
I think in my mind, yeah,
it's a great call, PropGod. I think this 14.5 longest reception is even better than the yardage. So let's sub that in there. And as we just talked about, that also is going to correlate better. The other note with Schultz is if we're attacking the play action, we know how often tight ends get targeted with play action too. So I think that's an awesome call. So now we have the longest reception for both Schultz and Nico Collins with the longest rush for Joe Mixon. What's next for you, PropGod?
Now next, this is a little different, but we're going to go with CJ Stroud over 8.5 rushing yards. Now, the reason being, the Cowboys, and I want to say it's because of that pass rush. We know they can get out the guys. It could be because of blitz too, forcing guys to step up in the pocket. And what we see those open windows, like we saw with Joe Burrow last night, or even Herbert. When the middle of the field just opens up. So the Cowboys are allowing the 4th most rushing yards per game to opposing quarterbacks, 28.9. But it gets a little bit deeper than that. So when you look at, I want to get this right here. I want to get it right. Okay, so when you look at Dallas, the quarterbacks they've seen, I want you to tell me what's in common, right? They've played 10 games. 6 quarterbacks have gone over. Hold on. Yes, they played 10 games. 6 quarterbacks have gone over 9 rushing yards. Jalen Hurt. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm going to tell you the 4 who did not go over. Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff, Derek Carr, and Daniel Jones. Now, Daniel Jones just sucks. So let's take him out the mix and talk about the other 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
Derek Carr, Jared Goff, and Kirk Cousins are what? Pocket passers, right?
Yeah.
They're not mobile guys. Look at the guys who they face who are athletic. Jalen Hurts, 56 yards. Brock Purdy, he's been running a lot this season, 56 yards. Justin Fields, 27 yards. Lamar Jackson, 87, which is insane, but it's Lamar. Taysom Hill, 18, so Lamar didn't have to run. I'm sorry, Derek Carr didn't have to run. And then Deshaun Watson at 39 rushing yards. So these guys are clearing this number, and they're clearing it like the athletic guys are clearing it like it's nothing. So looking at CJ, he's over the 8.5 rush yards in 6 out of 10 games this season. He even had 59 rushing yards against the Jets. So I think it's a great spot for him. Michael Parsons is back, so I think the pass rush will be formidable. And we've seen the Houston offensive line hasn't protected CJ like they were last season. So I think they'll be able to get after him, flush him out the pocket, and he gets probably about 20 rushing yards tonight. But we could just do the baseline for this.
Yeah, he's at 9.5 on underdog instead of the 8.5, but we can go with the 9.5, or if you prefer, we can go to the longest rush at 7.5. Do you have both there?
I would do. So every time he's gone over the season, he's gotten 10 plus. So I would just do the 9.5 still.
Cool. I like it. Another thing I'll say there, remember, Dallas likes to blitz. They like to play man coverage. Both of those things also good for scrambling quarterbacks. So I'm with you here. Next, I'm going to take us to the Cowboys. Finally, we need at least one from the Cowboys. And here we go. I'm going under on Dowdle's longest rush of 14.5 yards. Dowdle is under in every game but 2 so far this season. But the biggest thing, when you look at Houston, I can actually bring this up on the adjusted line yards tab. We can go to the defense here for adjusted line yards, and you can see Houston is the 4th best, so they're allowing the 4th fewest adjusted line yards. They do have this seeming weakness, open field yards, so some explosive runs. However, the Cowboys, and particularly Dowdle, have 2 rushing schemes that they use more than any other, inside zone and man or duo. Houston is not just fantastic against those 2, but they basically completely eliminate the big run with those 2. All of the big runs coming outside zone, and some other schemes as well. So you can find that stuff in Stats Hub as well. I can actually show you where. I'm not going to go through all of this right now, but easiest thing to do, you first, just to see how much each guy is being used. So like I can go to Dallas here and just rushing advanced, you can slide over to run type. And now here are your main 5 rushing categories. So like there's inside zone, outside zone, man / duo. And then if you want to look at the defenses, you go to the defensive tab, get some advanced filtering on here, rushing, run concepts, concept, and now pick whichever one you want to look at. So some really awesome stuff that we can do as always on Stats Hub. But all of that is to say Rico Dowdle lower than 14.5 for his longest rush. TwoGun, what do you think of this longest rush? And where are you going to go next?
It's funny because I would naturally I mean that makes sense what you're saying about the longest rush. Like if this was for pick 6, I'd want to pair all this with CJ Stroud over on the passing yards. But actually, I kind of think that it also works on. You can go with Cooper Rush. Just go with more on his passing yards as well. And I guess you probably won't get as much of a correlation penalty on underdog. On pick 6, they don't do correlation penalties, which is what's nice about it because you're playing against other people. But
we won't get any correlation penalty here because there's nothing paired with Cooper Rush. We don't have an over on yards or attempts or longest reception, anything like that, so we won't get any.
It's like everyone, whenever like a quarterback is made fun of so much, like, oh, he only had 45 yards, blah blah blah. Is it just? I mean, sometimes they really do suck. Don't get me wrong, But like I feel like 3 out of 4 times it's like they'll get a bounce back game. And I just don't see the Cowboys being able to run the ball against the Texans, so they're going to have to throw it. If you really want, you can maybe just go with attempts, but I'd probably go with just go with the yards. But
that was going to be my next question. If you preferred the 178.5 passing yards or the 31.5 passing attempts at 1.07x.
I probably prefer the 178.5 passing yards, but it's a mild preference.
Cool. So there we have it. There's our 6-pick play. I'll recap this real quick. We have Cooper Rush over 178.5 passing yards. Rico Dowdle under 14.5 for his longest rush. CJ Stroud over 9.5 rushing yards. Joe Mixon over 17.5 for his longest rush. Dalton Schultz over 14.5 yards for his longest reception. And Nico Collins over 25.5 yards for his longest reception. And when you are combining some of these, you can also then run it back with Nico Collins laddered all the way up to, where did that go? All the way up to that massive 13.24x for longer than 59.5 yards on his longest reception. With that, let's jump over to Showdown. And TwoGun, on our show yesterday, we kind of took everybody through what we believe to be potentially like the most popular lineup and kind of then talked about how to leverage that. So why don't we do the same thing here today? Let's build what we believe to be the chalkiest Showdown lineup. And I think you probably agree that we have to start with Joe Mixon in the captain.
Yep, for sure.
So from there, where do you think we want to go? Because I think people are going to be torn with wanting CJ Stroud and Nico Collins, but very quickly realizing if you try to plug these guys in, you're only left with $4,433 for the remaining 3 spots. So what do you think people do after clicking Joe Mixon?
I feel like the Texans defense is going to be super popular. I could be wrong, but I think everyone's going to see Cooper. Like they're just going to think Cooper Rush is a joke. He's going to throw a pick 6. I think the Texans defense will be a way for people to pay down a little bit and also kind of feed into their viewing of this as a massive beatdown.
Let me see where we have them projected. One thing I noticed, and I wrote about this in my Showdown articles, I think even though people see this 7.5 point spread and certainly want to favor the Houston side, I think 3-3 lineups and 4-2 are still going to be far, far, far more popular than 5-1 Houston stacks. So I'm not sure how popular this Houston defense is going to get. Let me see where we have them.
It says not that much on our optimizer. My gut says it will be.
I think I'm torn because I'm with you in the sense that I think they definitely could end up being more popular than the 11% that we have.
I can see Rico Dowdle being the one Cowboy everyone uses, so we can go ahead and plug him in. Okay. It also jives with what the optimizer says because people aren't going to really want to use Lamb because he's so expensive, and all the other pass catchers suck. So I think the people are going to either want to use Rico Dowdle, maybe Jake Ferguson.
Yeah, Ferguson stood out to me as well. So number one, agree with you 100% on Dowdle, and we also have him as the most popular Dallas flex. But people don't like using running backs against defenses. And this Houston defense, check out their price tag, $6,200. We haven't seen that kind of a price tag for a defense. So I think we might see Houston be pretty popular within 5-1 Houston stacks. But outside of those, I don't think they're going to be that popular. So I think I like your call more here on Dowdle being next. And then
I think there's going to be a lot of 4-2 Houston. I do think there'll be 5-1 Houston as well. There'll be a lot of 5-1 Houston. I'm sorry. I just think everyone thinks this game is going to be a smackdown of. I think people are approaching this game like it's a 14-point spread. Like this is the Detroit Jacksonville game. That's my gut. I could be wrong, but let's go ahead and build the rest of the slide. Let's just go ahead and throw in what did they throw in CJ Stroud?
So my thought here real quick, TwoGun, is because the Houston offense has these superstars. It's got Joe Mixon, CJ Stroud, Nico Collins, and even Tank Dell all the way up at $9,400 as a flex. because there's so much concentrated production at the top, I don't think we're going to see that many 5-1 lineups just because people aren't going to find that many Houston guys they actually want to play. Like if you want to do, mix in Stroud, Collins, Dell, you can't. You flat out can't. So I think that's going to keep the 5-1 lineups in check. I do think you might be right that 4-2 become the most popular build, more so than 3-3, which typically 3-3 is the most popular. So I think we could see that flip. And I am curious to see what's going to be more popular between 5-1 Houston and 4-2 Dallas. I think those could get close, but I'm pretty confident in saying Houston 4-2 will be the most popular, followed by 3-3.
How about we throw in Tank Dell and change Dowdle to Dalton Schultz? Not Dalton Schultz, sorry, Jake Ferguson.
Jake Ferguson. So Tank Dell and Ferguson still leaves 42.50. I like this. I think people will then go to either kicker. It honestly doesn't really matter which.
They'll probably go with Fairbairn, which they probably shouldn't, but they probably will.
I think they'll probably go Fairbairn, and then $3,100. Maybe they go Zeke, maybe they go Brooks. Although actually, I think we got word that Flournoy, I'm not sure how he pronounces his name, but he posted on Instagram that he's getting his first career start today. So people might click him for $200, which means that can they get back to Dowdle? No, they can't quite get Dowdle if they're going to leave Fairbairn. Let's see, what would Dowdle leave them? Schultz. So I think this probably makes a ton of sense as the most popular build right here. What do you think there?
They're going to do mix-in. Everyone's going to have mix-in. They're going to probably want to have CJ Stroud. It's going to be kind of basically the Texans, they'll have one wide receiver, mix-in Stroud, and then a shit guy or two. Is that fair to say? And then maybe one Cowboy.
Yeah,
I think that's pretty much what most people are going to be doing. It's I think they're going to be paying up at captain for Mixon. Maybe they do Nico Collins.
Mm-hmm.
But I have two showdown lineups. Neither of them has Mixon right now, which, maybe I'm just stupid, but I'm not doing like 5-1 Dallas by any means. But I'm mainly just going through CJ Stroud on the Texans, his pass catchers and him. That's a pivot. That's one way to pivot it. The other way to pivot is you can have a cheaper captain. You can go with like a Dalton Schultz as captain or something like that. But the most obvious pivot. So there's two ways to pivot. CJ Stroud and two pass catchers on the Texans, no Mixon. Another way is, Cooper Rush is going to be so low owned. I love him. I don't know if I love him as a captain, but he's just a way to mix up your lineup. And if you have him as a captain, go ahead.
If you go to Cooper Rush, you have to make sure you're getting some other Dallas guys in. And I think if I would make a rule that if I have Cooper Rush in the lineup anywhere, I want CeeDee Lamb in the lineup. And I would probably say if I'm using Cooper Rush, I probably just want CeeDee Lamb as the captain.
I think it depends on the rest of your lineup. I don't think you have to have CeeDee Lamb as your captain, but I just don't see Cooper Rush being your captain. Let's just leave it at that. Because I don't think he's going to just mix it to a shit ton of guys. But it's possible that Jalen Tolbert or Dalton Schultz. Plus it's just I don't know. It just depends on the expense of what you want a captain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I fundamentally think that people are going to look for the Texans defense more than we think as a way of with this type of lineup. If you take out Dowdle, you put in Dalton Schultz.
You mean Ferguson again?
Yeah, put in Ferguson, and then was put in the Texans defense.
I assume you want me to go back to Mixon as the captain.
Yeah. And then you have a cheap guy. See, it works.
It does. There's not really anyone in this range. I think Brooks might have been popular, except that now we think he might be supplanted by Flournoy. So this kind of puts people in a little bit of no man's land. I have a really hard time seeing people clicking the Texans before they click a kicker for $1,000 less when kickers have been so much better than defenses all season long.
Yeah, I think you're probably right though. I think Fairbairn might be extreme chalk.
Yeah.
Um,
And honestly, Aubrey too. Like both of these guys are averaging almost 12 fantasy points a game. Like they're by their typical production, they are underpriced. As by the way, is Jalen Tolbert. Like I think Tolbert's probably a solid play, a really good matchup for opposing wide receiver twos against Houston as well. So Tolbert might be my favorite Dallas play, and just kind of expecting that he's never going to get that popular, especially with Ferguson drawing some popularity. Where I want to take this to next is, as we've built all of these out, like we made the very clear decision to go Tank Dell because we thought that $1,000 discount from Nico Collins would be helpful in Joe Mixon lineups. That makes me think that I want to leverage the Joe Mixon captain lineups with Nico Collins captain. So let me kick this to you, PropGod. I'm guessing that you are fully behind the Nico Collins captain build.
Oh, absolutely. Nico for president.
There you go. There you go. So with Nico as the captain, we want to make sure we get CJ Stroud in there. Do you have a preference, Prop, of where we go next in a showdown line?
Honestly, I would go with Dowdle. I think Dowdle has a little bit of a receiving upside. Some of his best receiving games came with the Cooper Rush in the game because he's played with them through a couple of blowouts. So they got a little bit of chemistry there. So I will go with Dowdle.
Yeah, I like this thought. I also like the thought of trying to jam CeeDee Lamb in there as the only Dallas guy and kind of build out a 5-1 lineup. But interestingly, if we're doing this, even with Dowdle, like we only have $5,200 left. So we brought this up on the last show, TwoGun, but when we are choosing a wide receiver 1 and we are hoping that the running back fails and the wide receiver 2 fails, it does make sense to go with the kicker. And so I think maybe we go to Fairbairn in a lineup like this, or are you still thinking you just want Nico scoring the touchdowns and you're not really worried about Stroud becoming optimal if Nico hits?
I don't know. I'm just not going to kicker yet. I think it just depends on where you want to go with the lineup. If anything, I might go with Brandon Aubrey. The idea that the Cowboys at least kind of keep the Texans in the game, so they have to keep throwing it.
It makes some sense too, because you're basically saying like they're only able to move the ball through Dowdle. Dowdle is racking up these PPR points. You're not just hoping that he runs.
Like
the
I
ball.
wouldn't put Rush now in this lineup.
Yeah, 100%.
And at this point, you could put another pass catcher, like a cheaper pass catcher for the Texans if you want, or either way. I probably would lean. I guess it just depends on the player salaries. Can he fit? You could probably fit Dalton Schultz and Jalen Tolbert.
You definitely can. I don't know if you're trying to say Ferguson again, but
or Ferguson. Could you fit Ferguson?
You can for Schultz at 58. Just like that. You can also make Ferguson either of the.
I want like 3-3. See what I'm saying?
So you want Schultz for the 3-3. Yeah,
you can't put in Ferguson instead of Tolbert, is what I was getting at.
Got it. Yeah.
I think some people would probably you might want to put in I don't know, you could probably swap in Fairbairn instead of Aubrey. That's probably a little bit better. But I don't know.
Yeah,
I feel like we took Prop's starting lineup and we just like took it away from him. You know what I'm saying?
So yeah, why don't we go back? Well, we still have Dowdle, but Prop. Let me ask you this: would you prefer a 5-1? Or do you want a 4-2? Do you want a 3-3? What's your preferred build here?
I probably will go 5-1. I'm not mad at a 4-2 as long as Dowdle is one of the two from Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
A second guy from Dallas, I wouldn't be mad at Aubrey, because they just get him within 55. He's money. They're playing in Dallas, so you get us a couple field goals. He hit 2 last week. We get a good kickoff return, couple screens, dump offs, whatever the game. They get 2 first downs, and then boom, he kicks a field goal. I can see that happening a couple times So I'm not, and with CD, it's just hard for me to back him with no Dak. And
yeah, it makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah, it's just hard for me to back CD.
Yeah, I want to make a point to people. The reason why we care about the structure of the lineup as a whole, 5-1, 4-2 versus 3-3, we're not just talking out of our ass there. There is a very important aspect to it, which is we can look at the ownership projections for players. So like let's compare the kickers, for example. We have the kickers within a percentage point of each other in projected ownership. But in certain lineups, people don't want to have 5-1 typically. Like they're drawn to 4-2 lineups, they're drawn to 3-3 lineups. So if a lineup came down to something like, let me throw Tolbert in here. Okay. So if we had, does this work? Yeah. If we had this lineup here, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, CJ Stroud, Dalton Schultz, and Tolbert, most people here, if they're landing on a kicker, they're not going to take Fairbairn. They're going to take Aubrey. Now, you might be able to argue the case that like in this specific lineup, Aubrey would still make more sense. But what we're talking about here is the ownership of the player in similar lineups to yours, where a lot of the time you're going to get similarly owned players, but one of them is going to be significantly less popular in your type of lineup than in others. And so you can actually get a big ownership advantage if you are thinking about the total number of players that you have from each team. That's where I think 5-1 lineups can really, really make a big leap forward, is because you get these like massive ownership discrepancies that only exist because people are uncomfortable with a 5-1 lineup. And so that's why that has typically been my preferred round in showdowns, and it's been really successful. And a lot of the time it's because like I noticed down the stretch, it's like, oh, the only difference between my lineup and the lineups 10 spots behind me are they all chose this one $3,500 player. I chose the one from the other team. And most people probably would have, flipped a coin on that decision if not for the fact that they didn't want the 5-1. And so that's I think an important point that we should make here, since we talk so much about 5-1 versus 4-2 versus 3-3 anyway.
I would say on a 5-1 though, for the 5-1 Texans, and that's the only way you're going 5-1 is on the Texans, is I probably am using Joe Mixon. I'm using Joe Mixon, CJ Stroud, and a pass catcher, and I'm going to try to use the Texans defense because I think that's, and I think that they're going to be optimal in that situation. Because like in this case, it's like you have 3 Texans pass catchers. Like, come on, CJ Stroud's not going to throw it that much if they're just kicking the crap out of the Cowboys. So I generally like using kickers, defenses, stuff like that, instead of just a bunch of position players.
I'm definitely with you on the Texans. One thing I will say is I think you can still go with Houston Onslaughts without Joe Mixon, with Nico Collins as the captain, because this could just be a low-scoring game where they are not necessarily moving the ball all that well offensively. It's just that their defense is dominating. A lot of those possessions then offensively are turning into field goals because they're field goals, not touchdowns. It's not a blowout. It's still a somewhat competitive game where they are still going to be throwing the ball. So I think there are ways to build the onslaught without Joe Mixon, but I definitely agree with you on the Houston defense.
Yeah. I'm not really going there. My Spidey vibes say that everyone is going to be so all in on Texans, and if they're using the Cowboys in this game, they're either using Rico Dowdle in the sense that he'll get some catches, and they're gonna have to use on him because Cooper Rush sucks. They're not gonna use Cooper Rush. They'll think he's benched. He's gonna get benched. They're not gonna use CeeDee Lamb because he's expensive. So it's basically the only Cowboys people are willing to use is Ferguson, Rico Dowdle, and maybe Flournoy, or like a super cheaper, like who cares?
Yeah.
And that's why you're gonna have such preponderance of 4-2 Texans lineups and maybe even 5-1s.
Yeah.
Because I just think this Cowboys team is the most hated team I've seen. This Cowboys team with no Dak, that is probably the most hated team I've seen ever. I mean, like we talked about how Deshaun Watson Browns were hated, blah, blah, blah. That was really just Deshaun Watson was hated because Deshaun Watson sucks. But this Cowboys team without Dak after Cooper rushes 45 yards is I can't think of a team that is a 7.5-point home underdog, and no one is taking them. Like, if you look at the sports books, no one is betting on the Cowboys.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to leak over into DFS. So that's just my gut. Is the way to be different is, yes, don't use Joe Mixon. I think having a 4-2 Cowboys lineup is incredibly contrarian. 5-1 is just stupid. I even think 3-3 might be a little contrarian. We'll see.
Yeah, I agree with all that. As Prop said here, hit the like button while you're watching. You can also comment below. Let us know who your favorite prop, regardless. And we do have this very great reminder. Shout out to you, Deacon. I wrote a couple weeks ago about the Dan Campbell effect and how teams the week after playing the Lions are underperforming like crazy. So I will note that it's mostly been underdogs just getting absolutely slaughtered, not favorites getting upset, although favorites haven't performed exceptionally well by any means the week after either. So, TwoGun, I think the best question is how low owned would 4-2 Dallas stacks have to become for you to really want to play those instead?
I mean, I'm flat out telling you, I'm having a 4-2 Dallas and a 3-3. I'll post in the Discord who my captains are, but that's where I'm leaning on right now. Just because I think the combination of CD Lamb and Cooper Rush is going to be incredibly contrarian.
Yeah,
like just having them both in your lineup, no one's going to do that. I think some people could be like, okay, CD Lamb might get catches, so he's okay. I don't think. I guess, and if people have Cooper Rush, they'll probably have CD Lamb, unless they are like, I'm just gonna use Ferguson, and then I'll have a bunch of Texans. Like I just think this Dallas team is incredibly hated, and I could be wrong, but I feel like all the Texans will be kind of overowned, especially Joe Mixon, and the Cowboys. The expensive Cowboys will be underowned, especially CeeDee Lamb, Cooper Rush. So I think if you spend most of your salary on Cowboys, you have an incredibly contrarian lineup right there. And we have to think about his salary, not 5-1, because like who cares about Flournoy and $200? Like unless he happens to get a 70-yard bomb for a touchdown, it just doesn't matter. I'm talking about pure salary. I think most people are spending at least 70% on the Texans in this game.
Yeah, I like that thought. Prop, before we jump out of here, let's try to build one more lineup, at least a shell of a lineup that goes a little bit heavier on Dallas. So if you're building for Dallas to be at least competitive in this game, potentially even win this game, who is your favorite captain?
If I'm expecting him to win, it would have to be CD.
I'm with you there. I think he would be mine as well, which means next we are selecting Cooper Rush in the flex. I'll also note, by every single metric, Dak Prescott has not been good this season. Yes, we expect a drop off to Cooper Rush, but Cooper Rush has shown at least like some competence in the past where maybe we are all overreacting and the drop off from Dak to Cooper Rush is not going to be that big throughout the rest of the season. So I think a Dallas stack like this is actually pretty sharp, and I'm certainly going to toy with building one myself for my single entry tonight. Prop, where would you want to go from here? Are you now going to select your favorite Texan? Maybe it's Nico, maybe it's somebody else.
Then I would go with Nico.
Mm-hmm. And I know you like Dowdle, so you're going to try to fit Dowdle in here too?
Yep.
Let's see what that leaves us. Only $3,200. So we might end up realizing, okay, if we are going to go heavier on Dallas, and we want Dowdle in there as well, maybe we have to give up Nico Collins and go cheaper from Houston. Maybe we also just decide, all right, we can go from here. Like I think one thing we could do is let's go use that $200.
If you're not having Mixon, you can use the Cowboys defense because you're saying, hey, the Texans have to throw the ball. The only problem is who is using a 2,800. You know?
Yeah, I mean Robert Woods, like there's a chance he catches a touchdown, but you basically need the touchdown or he's going to fail. If we had 200 more, Ogunbowale would be fairly interesting here. It's a shame we don't have enough. Just because every now and then, if they're trailing in particular, he can get on the field and like the 2-minute drill.
You could go with Fairbairn instead of the Cowboys, and then like a super cheapie.
So yeah, I mean that was one of my thoughts is we could go all the way to Flournoy, and then that leaves us 5,400. We can use that on Fairbairn. So like I think that this is solid. And then of course you can also play with stuff like get rid of Dowdle and Flournoy, and now you get 2 mid-tier guys. Maybe you get rid of Nico Collins and Flournoy, and you get 2 mid-tier guys. So lots of different ways that you can build this out. But the Lamb and Cooper Rush start, I think, makes a lot of sense. And if you are assuming that Dallas is going to play well, they have certainly talked about wanting to get Rico Dowdle more and more involved. And so we've seen that he does have some actual chops in the passing game. And if they're running the ball, if they're controlling the ball at all, he will certainly be involved. So with that,
people real quick, when teams come out and talk like that with these narratives, we've been back in this trend all season. You take them in the first quarter, right? Rico Dowdle, first quarter receiving yards is at 0.5. That's 1 catch. As long as he doesn't lose yards on the screen, it's plus 134. So that was my bet. And Mixon is a guy who gets active in the first quarter as well. I'm playing both of their first quarter at 0.5 as straights. And then I'm parlaying them because when they both go over, they always get at least 5 yards, right? So I played them both as straights. Then I laddered them together with 5 each is plus 628 on FanDuel.
Nice. I like that. We also have this call here. It's Ferguson captain season. Maybe.
Okay. It's my guy.
So yeah, I think Ferguson captain, by the way, would open up some other really cool stuff, right? Like if you're actually then you'd have some money to do some cool stuff. Let's actually take a real quick look at what that looks like. I think I would still want to have CD in here somewhere. So maybe it's instead of Dowdle, you just say they're going to be throwing the ball all game and CD Lamb gets there. This would open up the possibility too that Dallas ends up optimal, not because they were competitive or won the game, but because they just produced in garbage time in the fourth quarter, as we've seen Dak Prescott do a million times over the last few years. So you can also get home that way with something like this. And now you can even go like Nico Collins and Joe Mixon as the finishing touches on this lineup. So I actually kind of like this Ferguson captain call too. Definitely worth exploring. Any closing thoughts here, TwoGun?
Not really. I just think there's various ways to get, contrarian or different or whatever. And, at the end of the day, the Texans probably are going to beat the shit out of the Cowboys. And that's fine if you want to build your lineup for that. Just, you can, if you want to try doing it without Mixon, that's an interesting way to get contrarian, even if it is the most chalk view of the game.
Mm-hmm. Any closing thoughts from you, Prop? And what time are you going live tonight?
I'm going live in 30 minutes. 6 o'clock on the FTN YouTube. Maybe about 6 o'clock. I gotta go pick up my steps on now. But no closing thoughts. Just a real huge Nico Collins fan tonight.
We're all big Nico Collins fans tonight. We will be back on Thursday, 5:30 Eastern as usual. Thanks everybody. We'll catch you next time.